Listen, the time of silence is over. The veil is being lifted. The hidden things of God are being revealed in this generation. For centuries, the world has walked in shadows, not knowing the true identity of a chosen people. But now, the truth thunders across the earth. The 12 tribes of Israel are rising once again. This is not history. This is prophecy. This is not just information. This is revelation. In a world that has spent centuries trying to erase, distort, or bury the truth, there comes a moment when the hand of God moves, and what was hidden in the shadows must come to light. And that moment is now. For the question of identity, the question of who we are, where we come from, and what we are destined for, has always been at the heart of every great story. And yet no story is greater, no story more powerful, no story more contested than the story of the children of Israel, the sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes whose names echo like thunder across the pages of Scripture: Judah, Levi, Benjamin, Simeon, Ephraim, Manasseh, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, Gad, and Reuben. Names not merely of men who lived thousands of years ago, but names of bloodlines, names of destinies, names of covenants, names that carry with them the weight of prophecy and the calling of God. And though kingdoms have risen and fallen, though empires have tried to take their place, though historians have rewritten their narratives, though oppressors have scattered them to the four corners of the earth, still God has not forgotten, still the covenant has not been broken, still the destiny lives on. For identity that is given by men can be stolen, but identity that is given by God can never be erased. And this is the power of the first truth, identity restored. Imagine a man who has been told all his life that he is nothing, that he comes from nothing, that his people are nothing, and so he walks in shame, in fear and doubt, never lifting his head, never realizing who he truly is, and then one day someone places in his hands an ancient book, weathered by time but alive with fire, and as he opens its pages, he begins to see words that shake him to his core, words that tell him of a chosen people, words that describe their suffering, their scattering, their chains, their exile, their cries in the night, words that mirror the very story of his own ancestors, words that proclaim not only their pain but their promise. And in that moment, something ignites in his heart. For he realizes the world has lied to him. He is not nothing. His people are not nothing. They are descendants of kings, priests, prophets, covenant bearers, light bearers. And suddenly the shame begins to break. The chains of falsehood begin to fall, and the man who once walked in the dust now begins to walk in dignity, because identity has been restored. This is not just a story of one man. It is the story of millions, the story of entire peoples, the story of scattered tribes who the world told were lost, erased, forgotten, but whom God declares are found, remembered, chosen, and rising again. And if you doubt the power of identity, remember the story of Moses, born in Egypt, raised as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, clothed in the garments of the palace, yet inwardly divided, living in two worlds, but belonging fully to neither, until one day he saw the suffering of his brothers, the Hebrews, beaten and enslaved, and in that moment something rose up in him that no Egyptian title, no Egyptian power, no Egyptian wealth could suppress. For though the world had tried to rename him, retrain him, reshape him deep within his blood, his bones, his spirit was the truth of who he was, a son of Israel, a child of covenant. And when that truth awakened, he could never again be content with the false identity the empire had given him. For once you know who you are, you cannot unknow it. Once you taste the truth, you cannot go back to lies. Once you awaken to destiny, you cannot sleep again. And so Moses turned his back on Pharaoh's palace. He turned his back on the false glory of Egypt. He turned his back on a crown that was not his, for he chose to suffer with the people of God rather than enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. And it was that choice, that reclaiming of identity, that became the spark of deliverance. For when identity is restored, destiny is released. And when destiny is released, history changes, nations tremble, empires fall, and freedom is born. This is why the revelation of the 12 tribes is so powerful, for it tells a people who were enslaved, colonized, scattered, and despised that their true story did not begin in chains but in covenant, not in oppression but in promise, not in slavery but in prophecy. And though the world may have called them nameless, faceless, forgotten, the Lord calls them chosen, beloved, remembered, sealed with his name, and no power of darkness can erase what God has spoken. Consider how the enemy works. He knows if he can steal your identity, he can steal your destiny. If he can convince you that you are less than what God made you, then you will never rise to the fullness of who you are. You will settle for crumbs when you were called to feast. You will bow to idols when you were called to walk with the living God. You will remain in Egypt when you were called to inherit the promised land. But when identity is restored, you stop bowing and start standing. You stop wandering and start walking. You stop surviving and start living, for you understand that your life is not an accident. Your bloodline is not random. Your story is not meaningless. You are part of something eternal, something unbreakable, something prophetic. And this revelation sets a fire in your soul that nothing can put out. Look at the dry bones in the valley of Ezekiel's vision, scattered, lifeless, without hope, without breath, and hear the word of the Lord. Son of man, can these bones live? The answers seemed impossible, for they were only bones disconnected and forgotten. But God commanded, prophecy to the bones, and as the prophet spoke, bone came to bone, sinew to sinew, flesh to flesh, and breath entered them. And they stood up a vast army, and the Lord declared, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, our hope is lost, we are cut off. But I will open your graves and bring you back to the land of Israel. Do you see it? The vision of Ezekiel was not just about bones, it was about identity. For when identity is lost, people are like bones without breath. But when identity is restored, the bones rise, the army awakens, the covenant comes alive, and hope is reborn. And so I declare to you today, your name is not forgotten, your heritage is not erased, your story is not lost. You are not the tail but the head, not the forgotten but the remembered, not the broken but the restored. For the God of Israel has not changed, and his promises remain true. Lift up your head, for you are not defined by what the world said. You are defined by what God has spoken, and he calls you chosen, he calls you beloved, he calls you his own. There are moments in history when truth is buried so deeply beneath lies, deception, and manipulation that the world begins to forget it ever existed, and yet truth has a voice, truth has a life, truth has a power that cannot die, and when the appointed time comes, truth will break the silence and roar like thunder across the earth. And this is what we are seeing now. The revelation of what was hidden for generations, the uncovering of what empires tried to conceal, the restoration of what was thought to be lost forever. And if you want to understand the weight of this moment, think of the man who spends his life believing he is an orphan, wandering the streets, longing for belonging but never finding it, searching faces but never seeing home, carrying emptiness in his chest and sorrow in his bones, until one day a stranger approaches and places in his hands a sealed envelope. And trembling he opens it, only to find adoption papers that reveal the truth. He is not an orphan at all. He is the son of a king, the heir to a kingdom, his name written in records he never knew existed, his inheritance secure, his identity undeniable, and suddenly his entire world is transformed. The emptiness gives way to fullness, the sorrow to joy, the wandering to destiny. For one revelation has shattered a lifetime of deception, and this is exactly how the truth of the tribes has been hidden and is now being revealed. For nations sought to claim what was never theirs, oppressors rewrote the story, colonizers shifted the boundaries, and even religion was used as a cloak to disguise and distort. But the word of God is unshakable, the covenant is unbreakable, and the voice of prophecy cannot be silenced. For as it is written, nothing is hidden that shall not be revealed, and nothing concealed that shall not be made known. And so the light of revelation pierces through centuries of darkness, declaring that what the world called lost, God calls found. What the world declared erased, God declares remembered. What the world buried, God raises up again. Think of Joseph, the son of Jacob, betrayed by his brothers, stripped of his coat of many colors, sold into slavery, forgotten in a dungeon, hidden away in the land of Egypt, his very identity concealed by chains, false accusations, and the silence of years. And yet through every injustice, God was weaving a greater plan. For though Joseph's brothers forgot him, though Pharaoh's servants overlooked him, though the world thought him lost in obscurity, God had not forgotten, God had not abandoned. And when the appointed time came, the prisoner was summoned to the palace, the forgotten slave was revealed as a ruler, the one hidden in the pit was raised to the throne, and the dreamer became the fulfiller of dreams, saving not only Egypt, but the very brothers who once tried to erase him. And in that moment, the truth could no longer be denied. The one hidden was revealed, the one forgotten was remembered, and the one despised was exalted. For no chain, no dungeon, no lie, no scheme of man can keep buried what God intends to reveal. And this is the message for us. You may feel hidden, overlooked, forgotten by the world, but when God's time comes, your identity will be revealed, your destiny will be unveiled, your calling will be made manifest, for nothing and no one can bury the truth forever. And isn't this what we see even in our own world? Entire generations told they were nothing, their histories erased, their languages stolen, their cultures suppressed, their names, their roots severed, their past rewritten in the textbooks of oppressors, until they believed the lie that they had no worth, no heritage, no destiny, and yet deep within their souls a fire would not go out. A whisper would not be silenced, a memory would not die, and now that fire is becoming a blaze, that whisper a roar, that memory a revelation. As God uncovers the truth of who his people really are, for what man tried to erase, God inscribed in eternity. What man buried in darkness, God preserved in light. And what man tried to scatter, God is gathering again. This is why the revelation of truth is so dangerous to the powers of the world. Because when people remember who they are, they cannot be enslaved again. When people discover their true story, they can no longer be controlled by the lies of the oppressor. When people reclaim their true identity, they rise with dignity, with courage, with faith, with power. And they become unstoppable, for truth is the key that unlocks chains. Truth is the light that drives out darkness. Truth is the voice that silences every lie. And when truth comes, it comes like a flood, breaking down walls, tearing down strongholds, and making the hidden plain for all to see. Remember how Jesus himself declared, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." For freedom is not found in wealth, not found in power, not found in armies or empires, but in revelation, in knowing who you are in God and what he has spoken over you. And once you know it, you cannot be chained again. Once you see it, you cannot be blinded again. Once you taste it, you cannot hunger for lies again, for truth fills what deception could never satisfy. And so the truth of the 12 tribes, long hidden beneath centuries of distortion, is now rising again. For prophecy declared it, history aligns with it, the Spirit testifies to it, and no power of darkness can stop it. For we are in the days when the hidden is being revealed, the covered uncovered, the sealed unsealed, and every eye will see that God is faithful, God is true, and God never forgets his covenant. So let this revelation ignite your spirit, let it lift your head, let it break the lies that have bound you. For you are not forgotten, you are not erased, you are not nameless, you are not lost. You are known, you are remembered, you are chosen. And in this hour, the truth that was hidden is being revealed in you, through you, and around you, until the world itself must confess that the God of Israel reigns, his covenant stands, and his truth has triumphed. There comes a moment in history when the silence is broken, when the chains are shaken, when the forgotten rise in the world can no longer ignore the voice of destiny. And that moment is not someday in the far-off future. That moment is now, for the rise of the chosen has already begun. It is unfolding before our very eyes. It is shaking nations. It is stirring hearts. It is awakening those who once thought themselves scattered, crushed, nameless, erased. And yet in the very places where they were scattered, in the very lands where they were enslaved, in the very shadows where they were hidden, the light of God is calling them forth, saying, "Rise, for you were never forgotten. Rise, for you were never abandoned. Rise, for the covenant still holds. Rise, for your name is written in eternity. And though the world may tremble at it, though rulers may resist it, though skeptics may mock it, nothing can stop the rise of a people chosen by God." Think of the story of a young woman who was told her whole life she was unworthy, that she would never succeed, that her family's name carried no honor. And so she worked menial jobs, living in shame, shrinking back from opportunity, believing the lies spoken over her, until one day she met a mentor who looked her in the eyes and told her, "You come from greatness. Your ancestors endured storms, built nations, carried wisdom. Your bloodline is not cursed, but blessed." And suddenly everything changed. The fire that had been smothered by years of rejection ignited. And within a decade, she rose to become a leader in her community, a voice for the voiceless, a defender of the broken. For once she realized she was not defined by her past, but by her destiny. Nothing could keep her down. And in the same way, when God's people awaken to who they are, no power on earth, no lie of the enemy, no chain of history can suppress their rising. This is what the rise of the chosen looks like. It is not only individuals standing taller, it is nations trembling, it is prophecy manifesting, it is the scattered tribes being gathered from the four corners of the earth, the voices of the broken joining in unison. the light of God piercing through centuries of darkness. And this is what was spoken long ago, that though Israel would be scattered like seed among the nations, though they would be oppressed, though they would walk through fire and flood, yet God promised, I will gather you from all the nations where I have scattered you. I will bring you back. I will restore you. I will make you one again. And in our time, that gathering is beginning. That rising is taking place, and the world cannot stop it. Look at the story of Nehemiah, the servant in a foreign land, brokenhearted over the ruins of Jerusalem, for though the walls had fallen and the gates had burned, the covenant had not perished, the identity had not died, and Nehemiah dared to believe that even from exile, even from ruin, even from ashes, the people of God could rise again, and with nothing but faith, prayer, and the favor of God, he returned to Jerusalem, rallied the broken, strengthened the weary, and in only 52 days rebuilt what the enemy had destroyed for generations. For when the chosen rise, they do not rise in their own strength, but in the strength of the Almighty, and no opposition can prevail against them. For Sanballat and Tobiah may mock, enemies may plot, armies may threaten, but the wall will rise, the gates will stand, and the covenant people will take their place once more. And so it is today. The world thought the tribes were lost, the nations thought the story was finished, but God is writing a new chapter, or rather, He is finishing the chapter He began long ago, and the chosen are standing up, rising from the dust, shaking off the lies, walking out of the chains, declaring, we are not forsaken, we are not forgotten, we are not defeated, we are alive, we are rising. And their very rising is a testimony to the faithfulness of God. For if you want proof that God keeps His promises, look at a people the world tried to erase, and yet here they are, still standing, still worshiping, still testifying, still carrying the covenant for the same God who raised Israel from Egypt, who restored them from Babylon, who kept them alive through exile and persecution, is the same God who is causing them to rise now. And if He was faithful then, He will be faithful now, for He has never broken His word, and He never will. And do you see what this means for you? If God can take a scattered people and gather them again, if He can take a crushed identity and restore it, if He can take a forgotten name and exalt it, then He can also take your brokenness and heal it, your exile and bring you home, your ashes and turn them into beauty. For the rise of the chosen is not just their story, it is your story. It is the story of all who put their trust in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The story of all who walk in covenant with Him, for His power to raise is not limited to nations. It is personal, it is for you, it is for today, it is for now. So lift your eyes and see the dry bones are rattling. The trumpet is sounding, the captives are being freed, the broken walls are being rebuilt, the scattered are being gathered, the tribes are being restored, and the chosen are rising. And if the chosen rise, then hope rises, faith rises, destiny rises, and nothing can stop what God has set in motion. There is a fire that burns in the soul of every chosen one, a fire that whispers you were not born for nothing, you were not scattered for nothing, you were not carried through the storms of history for nothing, for God does not call without purpose. He does not choose without mission. And this is the fourth truth, that to be chosen is not a privilege for pride, but a responsibility for destiny, not a crown of boasting, but a mantle of service, not a license to dominate, but a calling to reveal the light of God to the nations. And until that fire is embraced, the fullness of who you are cannot come forth. For the greatest tragedy is not when a man fails. The greatest tragedy is when a man succeeds at the wrong thing, lives for what he was never called to, climbs a mountain he was never destined to climb, and realizes too late that he missed his purpose. But the chosen cannot afford to miss it, for their calling is bound not to their comfort, but to the covenant, not to their convenience, but to their destiny. And when you know you are chosen, you cannot live like everyone else. You cannot walk like everyone else. You cannot compromise like everyone else. For there is oil on your head, there is fire in your bones, there is a covenant on your life, and to run from it is to run from yourself. I think of a man I once knew who grew up in poverty, surrounded by voices telling him to survive, just survive, nothing more, nothing greater, just get through life. But deep inside, he carried a dream of building schools for children who had none, of lifting others out of the same poverty that had shackled him. And for years he fought with doubt, tried to bury his dream, tried to silence the fire within, until one day, broken and weary, he fell on his knees and prayed, God, if this desire is from you, then make a way. And little by little, doors began to open. People began to come. Resources began to flow, and today hundreds of children sit in classrooms because one man discovered his true purpose, because one man said yes to the call. And if this is true of one man, how much more of an entire people chosen by God, called not just to exist but to shine, not just to survive but to transform, not just to carry a name but to carry a covenant? And for this we look to the story of Esther, a young Jewish woman hidden in the palace of Persia, an orphan raised in exile, seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of empires, yet placed by God in the very center of power for such a time as this. And when the decree of death went out against her people, she could have remained silent, she could have hidden in the luxury of her position. But her uncle Mordecai reminded her, "Do not think you will escape if you remain silent, for if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from another place. But who knows if you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" And in that moment, Esther realized her calling was not about her comfort, but about her people. Her position was not about her, but about God's purpose. And she rose in courage, risking her life to approach the king, and through her boldness, the entire Jewish nation was spared. And her story became eternal proof that when the chosen embrace their calling, deliverance is released, history shifts, and nations are saved. And so it is with the tribes of Israel today, scattered but not silenced, broken but not destroyed, forgotten by man but remembered by God, called not to fade into the nations but to shine among them, called not to live hidden but to live holy, called not to blend in but to stand out. For the chosen have a mission, and the mission is to reveal the God of covenant, the God of mercy, the God of truth, and the God who never fails. And when they walk in that mission, the world will see the light they carry, and through them nations will be blessed. For this is not about pride, this is about purpose, and purpose always demands sacrifice, faith, courage, and obedience. And yet the calling is not only ancient, it is alive now, which brings us to the fifth truth, prophecy in our time, for we are not only speaking of history, we are speaking of this very moment, this very generation, for the prophets long ago saw our day. They looked into the future and declared what we would see. They spoke of the gathering of the exiles, of the awakening of the dry bones, of the return of the remnant, of the trumpet sounding in the last days. And now we are seeing it unfold. Prophecy is no longer words on parchment. It is life in motion. It is history breathing. It is destiny manifesting. And we are witnesses of it. Think of a modern day illustration. A man who spends his life studying the scriptures in secret, mocked by friends, dismissed by professors, told that the Bible is outdated, irrelevant, a relic of the past. And yet year by year he watches as the very things written thousands of years ago play out in front of his eyes, wars and rumors of wars, nations rising against nations, the scattering and gathering of peoples, the rebirth of a land thought lost forever. And suddenly he realizes prophecy is not fantasy. It is reality, not speculation, but revelation. And he falls to his knees and declares, truly the word of God is alive. And that is the awakening happening now, for the very things foretold are being fulfilled. And the rise of the chosen is the living proof that God has not abandoned his covenant, that we are living in prophetic times, and that the clock of destiny is moving quickly. And for this we turn to the story of Ezekiel's valley of dry bones, that haunting vision of a valley filled with skeletons, scattered, lifeless without hope. And the Lord asked, Son of man, can these bones live? And Ezekiel, overwhelmed by the impossibility, answered, Lord, And God commanded him, prophecy to these bones. And as the prophet spoke, the bones began to rattle, the skeletons assembled, flesh came upon them, breath entered them, and they rose to their feet, a vast army. And God declared, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, our hope is gone. We are cut off, but I will open your graves. I will bring you back to the land of Israel, and you will know that I am the Lord. And this vision is not only for ancient days, it is for now, for in our time the bones are rattling again. The scattered are stirring, the forgotten are rising, the covenant is living, and the prophecy is being fulfilled before our eyes. And if you have eyes to see it, you will know that you are not living in ordinary times. You are living in prophetic times. You are part of the unfolding plan of God. You are standing in the days the prophets longed to see, and the rise of the chosen is the undeniable sign that the word of God is true. So take courage, lift your faith, open your eyes, for you are living not in the silence of exile, but in the sound of awakening, not in the despair of scattering, but in the joy of gathering, not in the emptiness of forgottenness, but in the fullness of revelation. For the chosen are rising to their purpose, and prophecy is unfolding in your very lifetime, and the God who promised is proving himself faithful once again, and if he is faithful to them, he will be faithful to you. If he keeps his covenant with Israel, he will keep his covenant with you. And if he can raise dry bones into a living army, then he can raise your life, your family, your destiny into the fullness of what he has spoken. For the time is not tomorrow, the time is now, and the God of prophecy is alive in our midst. So hear this: the world may try to silence the truth, but truth will not stay silent. Nations may rise and fall, but the covenant of God will never be broken. The 12 tribes of Israel are not lost, they are revealed. Their destiny is not finished, it is unfolding. And you, yes, you are living in the hour when prophecy becomes reality, when history meets eternity, when the scattered are gathered, when the forgotten are remembered. Stand in the truth. Walk in the covenant. Lift your voice, because the God who spoke in the beginning is still speaking now. The 12 tribes are rising. The truth is revealed, and the time is no bubble.